And I had been with City of Mountain Brook approximately, probably about, I guess, 3 years. I just got my medic license, I think in 2000. So I was actually that morning, the day of 9/11, September 9th, 2000 or 2001, I was actually on my way to a class that had to do with fire related. And I had stopped off at a Quick Mart to get me a couple of things and some fuel. And walking out, someone told me what had happened, someone that I knew. And at the time, I really didn't think nothing of it, only because in past histories, there's been a few, I think, incidents where small planes have actually hit one of the World Trade Centers. So I really didn't think nothing of it at first.
So that was at the time that just the first plane had hit and nobody really knew.
That's correct. It was just the first one. So getting in my vehicle and riding up to the class, I began to hear it start more coming onto the news. It began to be more real, and things, a lot of this was coming out, and it was getting more and more detailed. So by the time I got to the class, they had already shut down the classroom. They had already secured, because it was a fire department. So I'm thinking, this is more serious than what I'm thinking. So I came up to the door and they said class was canceled and that we would not be having anything right now, that all City Hall, that particular city that I was in, had already closed down everyone, especially the fire department, and they were on alert. So getting back in my vehicle, driving back, was when I began to start making phone calls and started talking to the staff here at Mount Brook. Hey, what's going on? And they began to, obviously they were watching it and was telling me. So it didn't become real until the visual part of it, and getting back and actually started seeing that on TV. And then that began to start coming real. Then you started seeing, I did have a cousin that was living in Manhattan at the time. So I called her mother and talked to her mother and was like, hey, do you know if Laurie's okay? Or do you know if she's fine? And nobody knew, because obviously phone system was down. Yeah. Nobody was answering. And so it really hit home there. And it's like the fire department's a brotherhood. So I felt like that if I got here, that circumstances would be different, because your monks, your peers, this is what you do for a living. When everyone's exiting a building in an emergency, obviously we're going in. So I came down here and just to be with everyone and start seeing, hey, what do we need to do as far as the city of Mountain Brook? How are we going to react to this? And so it began to start dovetailing together then, because you were able to express yourself to the other firefighters. Yeah. And let them know, hey, this is how I feel. And it was really an eye-opener, because you never think it can happen. We're always one tone away from that call. We tell our officers here every day, you're one call away from a call. We never know what's going to happen. We hope for the best on everything, but we prepare for the worst. And so just seeing all the disaster and all that happening that day, and you could relate, because you would see certain firefighter tools, you'd see certain firefighter apparel, turnout coats, and you would start saying, oh my goodness, look at there, I see a helmet, or I see a coat. And then that's when it really started coming home. And really after that, and then finding out, obviously family member, that the cousin I did have, that she was fine. So that was a good thing too, also that week. But ultimately getting something out of it was, we always want people to know that life is so precious. It is so precious, and that it can be taken. And training was catapulted, especially with high-rise training, any type of building training, any type of buildings that would have a large number of people in them a day. Not that we've not trained in the past, but right. Now it catapulted. Now we're looking at, okay, what do we need to do? And obviously this was after the fact, and our whole training changed. We still train today from the events of 9/11.
I wondered about that.
We still train today off of that. There's countless training books that we get, countless leadership books that we get here that is still based off of September 11th. And so, again, you know, there's people out there that are willing to sacrifice, that they know what they're getting into. These men and women know what they're getting into when they take that job. But that's what they want to do. It's a servant's heart, and they want to give. And just to see those that day going into that building and doing whatever they could just to get one individual to safety, that made, at that point, I was fairly young, so it gave me an energy to just want to do more. I loved what I did, and I love what I do, but it just gave me an energy like, this is what we do. This is why we're here. So I do believe after that, the biggest thing I guess I would say is just life again is so precious, and that we never want to forget that. We never want to forget that day. There's still families obviously that are still suffering over that, but you know, we can make it better by just showing them obviously the love and the compassion that we have for them. So it still is etched in my mind, obviously. I've got numerous books in my office on it. I do relate to a lot of that again, and just talking to people such as our firefighters that actually went there. You know, it never went a day didn't go by that you just didn't probably mention something about it to them.
Yeah.
So,
you know, one of the things that struck me, I mean, like you, I was old enough to, you know, I was on my way to work. I was, you know, I remember it in detail, but it's funny how, I mean, 20 years is a long time, and some of the memories have kind of gotten fuzzy, and it was amazing to me to read. I think I was reading the oral history, and some of the 911 operators and some of the people, I guess the World Trade Center had a call center. I'm not sure, because they interviewed several people who would have been like a 911 operator, but also people who were just at a regular call center. And I'm not really sure where that was coming from, but it was amazing because being on my side of the story, I know what happened. And some of the people in the building, you know, were really thinking, like they were saying things like, how to, you know, send a helicopter to the roof, you know, are people going to climb to the building and get out? Or like people had no idea that we couldn't get them out. Do you know what I'm saying? And
absolutely,
it was one of those things where like almost the entire nation at once realized, oh, wait a minute, like you're not a superhero. Like you don't have a cape. You can't fly up here. And
right.
But still those guys went in there and tried to find whoever they could. And it just kind of awe-inspiring, really, because people don't, you know, we're so used to modern conveniences, and we think we've got this long lifespan and we know how the world works. And when it doesn't work like that, it's stunning, I guess. I don't really have any other word for it, but
sure.
You know.
And you know, you made a good point. The resources were depleted. They had firefighters coming from home and going to their dedicated fire station that they were stationed at, getting gear and taking it to the scene, because they knew they didn't have enough fire trucks. They knew they didn't have enough personnel. They knew they didn't have enough, obviously, water supply. And again, I don't want to forget the 911 dispatchers and the calls that they were taking, and possibly what they were hearing or having to hear on the other end. It's disturbing. And again, you know, they took it upon themselves to do whatever they could to take care of those individuals in this time. So it was you could tell, just being trained and watching that, you could tell when we were talking about that here, looking at some of the resources they had, and you just knew that they were doing the best that they could do.
Yeah.
What they had.
Yeah. The other, I know we had talked about the Pentagon.
Yes.
And like the response to the people who were able to get out, and how much I guess your average person does not realize what happens I mean, really, that was like an explosion. But the fact that people were saying that a copy machine that was 2 floors above them was sitting on their desk, and everything was turned upside down, and it was black, and it was smoky, and the kind of things that you don't think about at all, because how would you know? That made it even more stunning that people were running in and out of the building and like dragging people out and going back in, and it's not like there's a clear path anymore, and
No.
it was hot in places, and the floor would collapse in places, and it was just chaos, and something that I'm sure y'all understand that people who are not firefighters don't understand, that we just don't experience that.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, only because obviously during an emergency, there's a sense of that fight or flight comes into play. And something you mentioned just on the Pentagon alone, I was just thinking, my mind went back to that, seeing the women and men in their daily attire, like their business attire, was just doing whatever they could do. May not have been a part of any type of rescue team, but they were involved, like you said, and I saw them pulling whoever they could out. I saw them going back again and doing what all they could do, and bonding together just because. And we never know. That's the thing, we never know. And then coming back here, we begin to face the idea of what's next. What's next? Is it multiple? So we begin to have to start putting a plan in play here. We begin to start putting certain protocols very quickly. Hey, if we respond here, if we respond to this location, this is what we're going to do. So we didn't know, even obviously the people that was inside of these buildings, and the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, a lot of cities didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if it was next, or how many of this was going to take place that day. So
and there was all the confusion around how many planes were actually
right
missing or involved, or
absolutely. And again, we didn't you didn't know that how many were up there that was going to try the same thing. So it became reality, because especially here in Mountain Brook, because we're in the flight path here. We're in the flight path to the Shuttlesworth Airport, International Airport. So we begin to think of things like that, and it was really trying. It tested us, and a lot of times we get tested in times of that, but it really took heart, because you knew that this was reality, that this was really happening, and now we've got to do A, B, and C.
Do you remember kind of how long the firefighters you were working with felt like you were in emergency times, I guess you could say? Like how long that concern lasted? And
oh yeah. And again, it was based off of that second plane.
Yeah.
We'll start from there. So the first plane, you're thinking, okay, maybe something there may have not went right, the flight path, the operator, any pilot. But immediately when the second one went through, we knew then something's not right. That began the emergency. So then obviously we heard the Pentagon, then we heard the one going down into the field. So it went on for years even after that. We're still have that, but it went on for years after that, whether or not we would see something else, or would we be encountered with something that we've never been encountered with. Yep. And so it etched a lot of memories. And we began to communicate with some of the firefighters there. Matter of fact, at one point, we brought one here. He came here. I don't remember if he had family here or something, but anyways, he came here and spoke to us. And that was almost like a healing process, I guess you could say, because you're hearing it on firsthand who responded there. So that helped us out a lot. And we really appreciated, I forgot the gentleman's name that did, but he came down and spent 2 days with us and talked to us, and that really went well.
Like, was that right after September?
It,
like
it
within
was
the year?
It's about a year after.
Yeah.
A year and a half. He came down, and he actually spoke once at Cherokee Bend Elementary.
Oh yeah.
So it went really good, and it was almost like a healing and bonding with that.
Yeah.
And so we kept in communication with him and several others.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, another part of it was, I've actually went there since all of this has happened. I've visited the museum, and I was telling someone the other day, that's probably one of the most somber feelings I've ever felt or seen. Nobody's talking, nobody's doing anything. You walk through the timeline, and I thought, what a great thing for those to come back and look at, and especially the members of the family, and how they would see something. So yes, that really was a great visit there. But now I was thinking this morning before our interview that we are hiring firefighters now that wasn't even born.
Yeah.
So telling them and talking to them about this, and even in our training, we can say this is because of what Battalion Chief so-and-so said from New York that they encountered.
Yeah.
And so we actually talked to them about that. So that's interesting seeing that now.
No, that fascinates me because as a librarian, I feel like there are certain ways you hand down stories, and that's really important. We took our kids when they were very young. We went on a road trip and ended up in New York, and we went to see the memorial. And it's hard to tell kids, what happened. You don't want to scare them, but at the same time, they need to know. And so I feel like that's one of the really important things, is figuring out a way to tell people that doesn't scare them, but lets them know, how important it is.
Absolutely.
To know what happened and to know who was involved, and things like that. So I love that. I love when I hear that people are passing on information like that, because sometimes it gets captured in a book, but you don't know if somebody's going to read that or
right. Exactly.
So it's great that it's just happening in your everyday,
and it's
in work. Yeah.
Absolutely. And see, it's like talking, my uncle was very active in Iwo Jima in World War II. So it was something he's seen. I didn't. And like you said, telling me the story of that, because he experienced that. And it does. And it does make a huge difference, because again, we don't want to forget that. We don't want to forget anything that was like life changing for us, and how we've gotten better since then. And let me tell you, 9/11 has obviously that day has really brought a lot of positive on, and that is through communications in the fire service and police service. The way you communicate, the way that you respond again to different types of calls. It also helps us in the manner of especially in, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it really helps us still today, FEMA. And things like that were put into Homeland Security. Homeland Security, things like that came about. And unfortunately, things like this happen from a disaster or a catastrophe, but it's so much better now. It is so much better now than what we were. And it's because we learned from that. And I just, you thank them so much for their service and sacrificing for what they've done. And again, we just don't want to let that go to the wayside.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for telling your story. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday.
Yes.
Like if you think of anything else or have anybody else get in touch with you, let me know, because Matt and I are working together Thursday night, and we'll be doing a lot of editing then, and then I'll be here all day Friday. So if anything comes up.
What about, how many police officers have you got from Mountain Brook? Okay, I'm gonna make a phone call now.
Okay.
And I'll see what I can do. Okay.
Yeah, tell them to give them my email or so. I don't know if they still have the sign up Genius, but tell them to email me or call me.
Okay.
Because I'm happy to call anybody anytime they can. I mean, it doesn't,
Okay.
Doesn't have to be 10 o'clock.
All right. I'll take care of that for you this afternoon.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you.
right. No
All
problem.
right, I'll talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.